The Hall of Convergence had always been a theater for power. Its pillars of refracted crystal and its vaulted ceiling of light were designed to awe, to remind every delegate that their civilization's survival depended upon cooperation. For centuries, it had functioned as such. But in the cycles following humanity's first incisions against the swarm, the hall had become something different. Not a place of awe, a place of dread. Delegates whispered in their seats as reports scrolled across translucent panes. Whole breeding worlds burned to cinders. Oceans boiled until their atmospheres screamed into the void. Hives turned to drifting carcasses, their reproductive cores sterilized by weapons outlawed since the dawn of council law. What horrified them most were not the victories, but the methods. The recordings sent by envoys attached to human fleets were displayed in the hall for review. Delegates recoiled from the sights, flame storms sweeping across planetary crusts, shock troops advancing with fire and steel through corridors slick, with ichor, gravitic weapons crushing spawn into slurry. One envoy had described it best in their trembling report: "The humans do not battle, they perform slaughter." The chair of the council raised its crystalline limbs for silence. The light through its body no longer shone with steady brilliance, but fractured dimly, like glass on the edge of breaking. "Delegates," the chair said, its voice strained, "we are convened to address the outcomes of humanity's first campaign. The swarm has been slowed, their spread reduced, refugee corridors have reopened, and yet," the chair hesitated. The silence stretched until the Qatari delegate snapped its wings with a sharp crack. "And yet," the Qatari rasped, molten eyes flaring, "we are asked to condone barbarism. We are asked to endorse extermination so ruthless it poisons the very void. Do you not see what we have unleashed? We gave them authority in desperation, and now they wield it like tyrants." The multithron chorus rose next, their voices buzzing in fractured harmony. "We watched their fleets sterilize Luxor Prime. Not a single organism survived. Not the swarm, not the native biosphere. They burned life itself until the soil became ash. This is not defense. This is annihilation." The flame being of the ascended flares pulsed with violent hues. "And what if they do not stop? What if they carry this war beyond the swarm? They wield weapons older than your laws. They name their ships after their own massacres. They fight not to protect us, but to prove themselves. How long until their fire consumes us as well?" Murmurs of agreement swelled. Some delegates pounded limbs against the tiers in emphasis. Others hissed or folded in on themselves in fear. The chamber became a storm of voices, each louder than the last, until the chair struck the floor with crystalline limbs hard enough to echo like thunder. "Silence," the chair commanded. "You may voice your fears, but you will not drown this chamber in them. The facts are plain. Without humanity's strikes, the swarm would have consumed half the spiral already. Entire sectors yet live because of their methods. The question before us is not whether their war is brutal. The question is whether survival can exist without it." A ripple of unease spread. None wished to answer. It was then that Ambassador Sira Kalen rose. She did not stand with haste, nor bow for acknowledgement. She simply stood, and the weight of her presence drew every gaze. She wore no finery, only the dark uniform of her people, cut with lines that spoke of function over ceremony. "You ask whether survival can exist without our war," she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried the chill of iron. "I answer you with the truth you dare not face. It cannot. The swarm adapts faster than you deliberate. For every day you waste debating our methods, a world is devoured. For every protest you voice, a billion lives vanish into the void. Survival demands ruthlessness, and ruthlessness is what you asked of us when you crawled before us." The Qatari delegate hissed, wings snapping. "Do not speak of crawling. We did not." "Yes, you did," Sira cut in, her tone sharp as a blade. "I was there. I watched as this chamber bent beneath its pride and begged humanity for salvation. Do not dress it in finer words, you begged. And now you flinch at the price of the bargain you made." The chamber quivered with anger. The multithron chorus buzzed in discord. The ascended flare pulsed a violent red, the Qatari's molten eyes blazing. You mean to shame us, the Qatari spat. I mean to remind you, Sira replied, her tone like stone grinding on stone. We are not here to comfort you. We are here to win a war you could not fight. If you cannot stomach what survival costs, then say so plainly. Tell your people you choose extinction over blood. Tell them their worlds will fall because their leaders feared dirty hands. But do not, her voice sharpened, cold and merciless, do not beg humanity to do what you cannot, and then cry when we do it well. The chamber went still. Even the chair's crystalline limbs faltered, dimming further. It was the envy of the Tenric League who broke the silence, their tendrils coiling with unease. And if you succeed, if you burn the swarm from every system, if you scour every hive, what then? Will you return your weapons to their vaults? Will you relinquish the power we have given you? Or will you keep burning until nothing remains but humanity? All eyes turned to Sira. She held their gaze, unflinching. When the war is over, you will not ask us to return our weapons. You will beg us never to put them down. Her words fell like a stone into still water, ripples spreading through the chamber. Horror, fury, resignation, all clashed in the faces and forms of the delegates. The chair rose, crystalline body trembling. This session is suspended. We will reconvene when reports from the second campaign arrive. Until then, humanity will continue. The dismissal rang hollow. No one truly believed the council still commanded. The galaxy had seen who held the sword now. Beyond the chamber, war ground on. At the edge of the spiral, human fleets struck again. Dreadnoughts descended on birthing worlds, their bombardments cracking planetary crusts. Shock troops descended into caverns, flamethrowers hissing as spawn shrieked. Orbital arrays released gravitic imploders, collapsing hives into dense knots of burning matter. Losses mounted. For every hive sterilized, human fleets paid in blood and steel. Ships torn apart by resonance waves. Soldiers swallowed alive by swarms. Entire regiments erased in moments. But the war doctrine held, total annihilation, unrelenting, merciless. Captain Elian stood aboard the Ashbringer as a breeding world cracked beneath its guns. The planet's oceans boiled into steam. Spawn shrieked as their nurseries ignited. The council envoys aboard the ship turned away, some weeping, some whispering prayers. Elian watched without blinking. His voice was quiet, steady. Mark it finished. Move to the next target. The war did not pause. The incisions cut deeper, but the swarm adapted. Their spawn grew thicker carapaces, resistant to flame. Their resonance evolved, shaking even the strongest suppression fields. Each battle was harder than the last. Yet still humanity advanced, burning worlds to ash and carving survival from ruin. Back in the Hall of Convergence, whispers spread. Some delegates argued that humanity was worse than the swarm, that once the war ended, they would turn their fire upon the galaxy itself. Others argued that without humanity, there would be no galaxy left to fear them. Ambassador Sira walked those corridors alone, her presence both dreaded and necessary. She knew what they whispered, she knew their fear, and she knew the truth they could not yet face. The war had only begun. The first wave of incisions had been brutal, but they had been restrained by human standards. Firestorms, gravitic imploders, sterilization campaigns, these were tools that humanity had perfected but only begun to wield. The second wave would show the galaxy what escalation truly meant. Admiral Kalen convened his command council in the iron-walled chamber beneath Titan's shipyards. Holocharts spread across the room, marking not only swarm concentrations but the border systems of every council species. The maps were not for diplomacy, they were for logistics. The swarm adapts, Kalen said, his voice level. Already their carapaces resist our flames. Already their resonance fractures our suppression fields. We predicted this. Now we respond. He gestured, and the maps shifted. New markers appeared, black sigils of death. We will deploy the Scourge warheads. We will activate the Silence Net. We will begin orbital immolations on worlds where containment is impossible. These weapons are forbidden by Council law, but Council law has no relevance in extinction. We will use every tool at our disposal. No more hesitation. There was no dissent. The commanders nodded, as if Kalen had merely confirmed what they had known all along. "Begin mobilization," Kalen ordered. "The galaxy begged us for survival. They will have it, no matter the price." The Scourge warheads were the first to be unveiled. They did not simply kill, they lingered. Clouds of nanite plague spread through hives, stripping flesh from bone, bone from dust, until even the air was poison. The swarm choked on its own reproduction, unable to feed or spawn. Council envoys assigned to witness recoiled in horror. One recorded transmission was played in the Hall of Convergence, footage of spawn convulsing as the air shimmered with invisible death, their screams dwindling into silence while the warheads' haze crawled across the land. The envoy's voice trembled in the background. "This is not battle, this is plague. The humans have become architects of damnation." The chamber erupted in fury when the footage ended. "This is unconscionable," cried the Multithron chorus, their voices trembling in near dissonance. "They poison entire worlds. They leave nothing behind but ash and rot. This is not defense. This is desecration." The Qatari delegates' molten eyes flared. "You see it now. The humans wield plagues as weapons. Today they scour the swarm. Tomorrow they may scour us." The chair of the council glimmered dimly, its body fractured by stress. "And yet," it whispered, "the swarm's advance has slowed further. Sectors thought lost are stabilizing. Populations once doomed now breathe. You condemn the methods, but you cannot deny the results." It was Ambassador Sierra Kalen who spoke next, standing with her shadow cast long across the chamber. "You speak as though you have a choice," she said, her voice hard. "You do not. You gave us command because you had no other path. You still have none. Do not delude yourselves with outrage. You knew what humanity was. You knew our history. You knew our wars. And yet you begged us. This is what salvation looks like." The ascended flare pulsed with crimson fury. "You dare speak of salvation? You commit atrocities before our eyes. You strip life itself from worlds. What kind of savior does this?" "The kind that wins," Sierra said coldly. The chamber fell to silence. But the Scourge warheads were only the beginning. Next came the silence net. Vast arrays of resonance-dampening fields deployed across star systems, blanketing not only swarm communications, but all communications. Civilian colonies caught within the net found themselves isolated, their signals extinguished. Council fleets wandering into its reach discovered their navigation crippled, their systems unresponsive. The humans did not apologize. "You asked us to stop the swarm," Admiral Kalen transmitted to the Council. "The silence net ensures they cannot coordinate. Civilian hardship is regrettable, but survival demands it." Regrettable. The word spread like poison through the Hall of Convergence. Delegates screamed betrayal. The Qatari accused humanity of building a prison across the stars. The Multithron chorus warned that entire colonies were at risk of famine without supply lines. Even the chair's crystal form dimmed further, its voice brittle. And yet the reports continued to arrive. Swarm fleets floundering without resonance, hives collapsing without guidance. The silence net worked. It strangled the enemy even as it strangled everyone else. The galaxy was trapped inside humanity's doctrine. The third escalation was the most feared, orbital immolations. Where Scourge warheads poisoned and silence nets strangled, orbital immolations ended everything. Human fleets targeted worlds too entrenched with swarm presence for reclamation. They deployed antimatter torches, igniting atmospheres until entire planets became raging infernos. Oceans vaporized, continents split, and skies burned brighter than suns. The first world immolated was Irasan, a council colony already half devoured by the swarm. Survivors had pleaded for evacuation, but Kalen's command judged it impossible. The order was given. The torches fell. From orbit, the world became fire. For 3 days, Irasan burned. Not a single organism remained when the flames died. Footage leaked to the council. Survivors' screams echoed across the hall. Delegates wept, some collapsing in grief, others shrieking accusations. "You murdered civilians," the Qatari roared. "You immolated our people. They were already dead," Sierra Kalen said coldly. The swarm had consumed them. We spared them the fate of becoming spawn. Irasan is ash, yes. But the swarm will never rise from that ash. That is victory. The multithron chorus keened in despair. Victory that leaves only ghosts. Sierra's gaze swept across them. Ghosts are better than extinction. Outside the chamber, humanity's fleets pressed on. Captain Elian stood aboard the Verdun's Ghost, watching as another hive world collapsed under orbital immolation. His crew did not cheer. They watched in silence as fire consumed oceans and turned sky into molten glass. When the flames died, Elian spoke softly. "Mark it finished. Move to the next target." He did not see victory. He saw necessity, and necessity had no mercy. Back in the Hall of Convergence, fissures deepened. Some delegates whispered of rebellion, of uniting fleets to resist humanity's grip. Others whispered of surrender, of abandoning resistance and letting humans carry the war to its conclusion. The chair struggled to maintain order, its crystalline body cracked by the strain. "We must endure," it said, voice trembling. "When the war is over, we will confront humanity's excesses. For now, we have no choice." But the whispers did not fade. They grew, and Sierra Kalen knew it. She walked the corridors of the hall with eyes sharp as blades, listening to whispers of fear, of conspiracy, of rebellion. The council trembled, but it would not yet break. Not yet. What they did not understand was simple. The war itself was far from over. The swarm still writhed. It still adapted. And humanity was only beginning to reach into its darkest arsenals. For months, humanity's war had seemed inevitable in its rhythm. Advance, burn, immolate, sterilize. The swarm screamed and twisted, but always retreated before human fire. Then came the change. It began with silence. Fleets vanished into the dark, swallowed without distress signals. Outposts went dark without sign of struggle. At first, command assumed the silence net had caused interference. But when reconnaissance ships returned, their footage chilled even hardened admirals. The swarm had adapted. Where once they had swarmed in endless tides, now they came silent, coordinated without resonance. Where once they relied on carapace and flesh, now their forms shifted, blackened, hardened, resistant to every weapon humanity unleashed. And worse, they had learned to mimic. One recording showed a human distress call, voice perfect, luring a frigate into a trap where hundreds of swarm ships erupted from false wreckage. Another showed spawn infiltrating abandoned colonies, reshaping their bodies into grotesque parodies of human forms, walking among the survivors before unleashing slaughter. And then they came for Sol. It was Admiral Kalen himself who received the first alert. Swarm fleet incoming, vectoring from the Perseus arm, projected arrival, Earth's orbit within 20 days. The chamber beneath Titan fell silent. Officers stared in disbelief. Sol had always been fortress. The Terran defense network had been layered with fleets, guns, and shields. To strike directly at Earth was madness. But the swarm was no longer bound by madness. It had learned. Kalen's voice was calm, steady as iron. "Begin contingency, Helios." Officers shifted uneasily. They had trained for Helios, whispered of it in barracks, but none had believed it would ever be used. "Admiral," one ventured, "Helios is irreversible." "So is extinction," Kalen said. "Prepare the Sunfire arrays. Humanity will not fall." The council heard of it only days later, when reports leaked that Sol itself was under threat. The Hall of Convergence erupted in chaos, delegates shrieking disbelief. "They come for Earth," the Qatari hissed, wings trembling. "How is that possible?" "They adapt," the multithron chorus intoned, their voices discordant with fear. "We warned that the swarm cannot be contained. It evolves. Now it comes for the heart of its enemy." The chair dimmed nearly to transparency. If Earth falls, humanity falls. If humanity falls, the galaxy follows. It was Ambassador Sierra Kalen who stood once more, her presence cutting through the chamber like a blade. "You should pray the swarm never reaches Earth," she said coldly. "Because if it does, you will witness the last weapons humanity swore never to use." The ascended flare pulsed uneasily. "What weapons?" Sierra's gaze was like stone. "Pray you never find out." But the Council did find out. Envoys embedded within soul-transmitted fragments of preparation. Beneath the crust of Mercury, titanic devices stirred, machines that drank sunlight and stored it in chambers the size of mountains. Along the orbit of Venus, arrays unfolded like wings, focusing energy into beams brighter than stars. Deep within Earth's mantle, hidden silos opened, revealing warheads that could shatter worlds. The humans called them the Sunfire Arrays. Their purpose was not defense. They were built to ignite stars. Envoys whispered in horror as they realized what Helios meant. If Sol itself were to fall, humanity would not allow Earth to be devoured. They would turn their own system into a weapon, igniting its star to burn everything within reach, including themselves. The swarm came. It emerged from the dark in silence, a fleet vast enough to eclipse worlds, their forms twisted into blackened armor, their movements eerily precise. They moved not as beasts, but as an army, each ship sliding into formation, each wave striking with purpose. The Terran defense network roared to life. Rail batteries spat streaks of molten metal. Antimatter torches flared. Fleets surged from Mars, from Luna, from the hidden yards of the belt. The void lit with fire. For 3 days, Sol burned. Human ships tore into the swarm, but the enemy did not break. They adapted even mid-battle, absorbing hits that should have split them apart, reshaping their forms to bypass defenses. They struck Earth's shields directly, slamming into orbital arrays, tearing apart satellites. On the 4th day, the order came. "Activate the Sunfire Arrays," Admiral Kalen commanded. Beneath Mercury, the great machines drank deeper of the sun's light. Along Venus, the focusing arrays glowed until their surfaces cracked. Within Earth's mantle, the silos primed, and the Council watched in horror. The envoys broadcast every image to the Hall of Convergence, the sun flaring unnaturally bright, the arrays glowing like knives at the edge of space, the warheads trembling on the brink of ignition. The Qatari delegates shrieked. "They mean to ignite their own star." The Multithron chorus buzzed in panic. "If they fire, they will immolate their system." "Billions will die," the chair trembled, cracks spidering through its crystal form. "They mean to deny the swarm its prize. They would rather burn themselves than fall." Ambassador Sierra stood silent, watching the chaos. She knew what none of the others could grasp. Helios was not bluff. Humanity would burn Sol itself before it allowed Earth to be devoured. But Helios never fired, not fully. As the arrays reached critical, humanity unveiled its second contingency, the Leviathans. From hidden vaults beneath Europa's ice and Saturn's rings, they emerged. Ships so vast they defied classification, kilometers of armored hull bristling with forbidden weapons. They moved like mountains, slow but unstoppable, their guns firing beams that split swarm vessels into ash. The Leviathans were myths within humanity's own ranks, whispered as last resort gods of war. Now they came, and with them came reprieve. The swarm faltered under their guns, splintering, retreating into the void. Sol was saved, but the cost was staggering. Half the fleet destroyed, orbital defenses shattered, millions dead on Luna, Mars, and Earth itself from debris rains and shattered shields. When the Council received the casualty lists, the hall went silent. For the first time, the delegates felt not only fear of humanity, but pity. Humanity had saved them all, and paid in blood greater than any Council species had ever endured. But that pity twisted quickly back to dread when they remembered the Sunfire Arrays. "They would have done it," whispered the Tenric Envoy, trembling. "They would have burned their own star." Sierra Kalen turned, her eyes cold. "Yes, and we still will if we must." The chamber recoiled as though struck. The war was no longer just survival. It had become escalation without end. The swarm adapted. Humanity reached deeper into its vaults of darkness. Each new battle demanded greater sacrifices, greater horrors. And in the shadows of the Hall of Convergence, whispers grew louder. What happens when the swarm is gone? What happens when the only power left holding the sword is humanity? The swarm did not retreat. It regrouped. Reports streamed in across the spiral, worlds devoured faster than before, spawn evolving into shapes unrecognizable. Where once they had been instinct, they now wielded strategy. Where once they had been beast, they now built fortresses. Humanity had slowed them, bloodied them, but not broken them. The swarm learned, and in learning, it grew stronger. Admiral Kalen stood before the Leviathan Ashbringer Eternal, its armored hull spanning kilometers. Around him, a fleet unmatched in history gathered, every dreadnought, every Leviathan, every arsenal humanity had kept buried in shadows. They hung in orbit around the shattered remnants of Mars's defenses, a grim monument to the price already paid. "This is the end," Kalen said to his commanders. His voice carried no triumph, only gravity. "The swarm has concentrated in the Sagittarius Rift. If it is not destroyed there, it will spread beyond control. There will be no second chance. Humanity will commit all we have. Total war, no retreat, no survivors." The commanders did not flinch. They had long since shed hesitation. Kalen continued. "Activate contingency Thanatos." A silence fell, heavier than any before. Thanatos was the darkest of contingencies, whispered only in classified vaults. It was not defense, it was not survival, it was extermination. The order rippled outward. Across Sol, hidden vaults opened once more. Warheads older than memory were primed. Beacons flared, summoning fleets hidden even from allies. Humanity gathered everything it had, every weapon, every soldier, every Leviathan. The final war had begun. The council chamber fractured. Reports of contingency Thanatos reached the Hall of Convergence, and with them came panic. Delegates screamed at one another across the tiers. The Qatari shrieked that humanity meant to destroy not only the swarm, but the galaxy itself. The Multithron chorus wept in discordant tones, mourning worlds not yet lost. The ascended flare burned with furious light, demanding immediate intervention. The chair struggled to hold order, its crystal body splintering with each outcry. "Delegates, hear me. Humanity prepares its final campaign. Yes, their methods terrify us. Yes, their weapons defy every law we hold sacred. But without them, there is no galaxy left to fear. If they fall, we fall with them." The Tenrec Envy's tendrils quivered. "And if they succeed, if they wield Thanatos and scour the swarm to ash, what remains of us? Who will command humanity then?" All eyes turned once again to Ambassador Sira Kalen. She stood calm as stone amidst the storm. "You asked what happens if we succeed," she said, her voice steady, cold. "I will tell you, you will live. You will see your worlds rise from ruin. You will see your children breathe air not choked by spawn. And yes, you will fear us. You should, because we have shown you the truth you buried beneath your laws. Survival demands savagery. You can curse us, you can dread us, but you cannot deny us. We will end this war no matter the cost." The chamber erupted again, but Sira's words lingered like iron. In the rift, the war began. The swarm had built fortresses of flesh and bone across shattered worlds, their hives stretching into orbit like tumors. Their fleets filled the void, black and endless, moving in precision that mocked the Council's disbelief. Humanity descended upon them like fire. The Leviathans opened with beams that tore planets in half. Dreadnoughts unleashed volleys that stripped atmospheres from moons. Scourge warheads rained, spreading plagues that ate through spawn and structure alike. Orbital immolations ignited worlds, turning hives into suns of fire. The void screamed with battle. For weeks, the war raged. The swarm adapted, countering each weapon, twisting forms into horrors beyond comprehension. But humanity adapted faster. Every failure birthed a darker weapon. Every loss demanded a greater atrocity. The swarm threw itself into the fire, and humanity burned it without hesitation. In the Hall of Convergence, envoys watched through trembling broadcasts. One showed the Somme Eternal unleashing a warhead that shattered a planet, its fragments glowing as they drifted into a sea of spawn. Another showed shock troops descending into caverns, their flamethrowers hissing as spawn screamed and walls of flesh collapsed. Delegates wept. Some turned away, unable to watch. Others whispered prayers. The Qatari delegate raged, wings flaring. "This is no longer war. This is apocalypse. Humanity wages genocide upon the stars themselves." Ambassador Sira Kalen's voice was steel. Genocide against extinction, you tremble at the cost, we tremble at the alternative. The chair could barely hold its form, its crystal limbs splintering into shards. What if they do not stop? It whispered. What if the swarm falls and humanity does not lay down its fire? No one answered. In the rift, the climax came. The swarm's core hive, the Great Mother, vast as a world, rose from the depths of a shattered planet. Its tendrils stretched into orbit, its spawn numbering in the trillions. It was not beast, not army, but something greater, a will, a mind, a hunger vast enough to rival stars. Admiral Kalen gave the order without hesitation. Deploy Thanatos. The warheads launched, not plague, not fire. Something older, darker, singularity bombs. They tore holes in space itself, collapsing gravity until worlds folded into nothingness. The swarm screamed as its fortress world imploded, its spawn crushed into silence, its core consumed by the void. The rift itself shuddered, stars flickered, silence fell, and then nothing. The swarm was gone, the galaxy exhaled. Reports spread across every world. The swarm annihilated, the rift sterilized, humanity victorious. Refugee corridors reopened, colonies cheered in disbelief. Species that had wept in terror now sang of salvation, but in the hall of convergence there was no celebration, only silence. The chair, its crystal body fractured beyond repair, whispered, "The swarm is no more, the galaxy lives." But at what cost? The Qatari delegates' wings trembled. At the cost of everything. They wield singularities as weapons, they burn stars, they command death itself. We asked for survival, and we have it, but now humanity holds the galaxy by its throat. The multithron chorus whispered in discord, perhaps extinction would have been kinder. Ambassador Sira Kalen stood in the chamber, her uniform black as void, her gaze unflinching. "You speak of cost," she said. "You speak of fear, but you still breathe. Your worlds still turn. Your children still live. That is the cost of survival. Humanity has paid more than any of you can imagine. We burned our own skies. We buried millions in ash. We prepared to ignite our own sun. Do not speak to me of kindness. Speak only of survival." The chamber quivered with silence. Sira's gaze swept across them. "The war is over. The swarm is ash. But remember this. When you begged humanity to save you, you begged for more than victory. You begged for the fire that only we could wield, and fire does not return to the dark once it has burned. We are what you made us. And now you will live in the world we saved." Her words hung like iron across the chamber. The council said nothing, and in the silence, the galaxy realized a truth far darker than extinction. The swarm was gone, but humanity remained. The rift was silent. For the first time in living memory, no swarm creature stirred in the Sagittarius void. The worlds there hung gutted, sterilized, their cores collapsed into singularity scars that flickered like wounds in space. No signals, no shrieks, no resonance. The war was over, but silence did not bring peace. Admiral Kalen stood alone on the observation deck of the Leviathan Ashbringer Eternal. Its hull bore the scars of 1,000 battles, whole sections still glowing from emergency welding. Around it, the remnants of humanity's fleet drifted in grim formation, dreadnoughts limping, destroyers patched, carriers half-empty. They had won. That truth could not be denied, yet victory felt hollow. Reports streamed endlessly across Kalen's console. Mars, 20% of the population dead. Luna, orbital collapse, millions buried under falling debris. Earth, skies blackened by ash and fallout, agricultural systems on the brink of collapse. Entire fleets gone, names already consigned to casualty rolls. Kalen whispered to the void, though no one could hear him. "We killed the swarm, and in killing it we killed ourselves." He did not know whether to weep or laugh. He did neither. In the hall of convergence, silence reigned. The delegates gathered once more, but the chamber felt less like a council and more like a tomb. The chair of convergence had fractured beyond repair. Its crystalline body lay in shards at the chamber's center, unreplaced. No voice filled the void with order. Delegates whispered instead of shouting. They spoke not of policy, but of fear. "The swarm is gone," the Qatari said, wings drooping. "But humanity remains, stronger than ever, What law binds them now? They claim to have fought for us all, the multithron chorus intoned. But who among us commanded them? Who among us can demand they disarm? They hold Thanatos. They hold Leviathans. They hold weapons that drink stars. The ascended flare burned dim, its brilliance guttering. We begged them to save us. They did. And in doing so, they showed us what they are. They are not council. They are something else, something greater or something worse. No one answered. No one dared. At the edge of the chamber, Ambassador Sira Kalen stood in silence. She did not speak because she did not need to. Humanity's victory spoke for her. On Earth, the skies were grey. Ash drifted in the upper atmosphere, remnants of orbital bombardments and shattered fleets. Crops struggled, rivers choked with debris, cities smoldered where wreckage had fallen. The cradle of humanity had survived, but survival was a thin word, yet life endured. Children still laughed in the rubble. Families rebuilt. Factories roared back to life, forging steel not only for weapons, but for homes. Humanity had always known how to rebuild, but everywhere there lingered a quiet dread. Survivors whispered of the sunfire arrays hidden beneath Mercury, of the Leviathans still patrolling Sol, of Thanatos warheads still primed in secret silos. They whispered of what humanity had done to win, burning worlds, collapsing stars, unleashing plagues. And they asked, in hushed voices, what would happen if the Council ever turned against them. The answer was always the same: the Council would not survive. The Leviathan grave of dawn drifted above the ruined world of Syndrales, one of the countless colonies the swarm had consumed before the war's end. Its surface was black glass, its oceans boiled away, its cities reduced to bone and ruin. On its observation deck, Captain Urin stood with his surviving officers. He had fought through the rift, watched comrades torn apart, burned hives into suns. He had ordered the use of scourge plagues, watched spawn melt into rivers of sludge. He had not flinched then, but now, staring at the silence of Syndrales, he felt only emptiness. "We saved nothing," one officer whispered. "The swarm is gone, but the worlds are dead. What did we win?" Urin's voice was hollow. "We won the chance to ask that question." It was no comfort. In the refugee worlds beyond the rift, survivors cheered. They lit fires, sang songs, raised monuments to humanity. For the Kartari huddled in exile, for the Tenrik crowded into temporary stations, for the multithrons scattered across abandoned colonies, the news was salvation. The swarm was gone, they would live, but with the cheers came unease. For every monument raised to humanity, there were whispers in the dark. Humanity had destroyed as much as it had saved. They had waged war not as liberators, but as executioners, and yet none could deny that without them, there would be no survivors at all. Gratitude and fear walked hand in hand. Ambassador Sira Kalen returned to Earth only once, summoned before the high command of Sol. The generals and admirals welcomed her as a hero, but she refused the title. She stood in the ruins of Geneva, beneath skies still grey, and spoke quietly. "The galaxy sees us as monsters," she said. "They will not forgive the weapons we unleashed. They will not forget the fire we wielded. Already they whisper of rebellion, of containment, of coalitions to restrain us, and they are right to fear. We have become what they dread most, the proof that survival has no laws." Admiral Kalen, her brother, watched her with weary eyes. "Do you regret it?" "No," Sira said. "Regret is for those who had a choice. We did what had to be done, but now we must decide what we become." Her words hung heavy, and no one answered. Whispers spread across the galaxy. Some worlds swore allegiance to humanity, declaring them protectors of the stars. Others plotted in secret, whispering of alliances against their saviors. Merchant guilds grew rich trading in human arms. Border systems begged for human garrisons. The council itself fractured, half its delegates calling for submission, the other half for resistance. And through it all, humanity rebuilt in silence, neither confirming nor denying its intentions. The Leviathans remained in orbit. The Sunfire arrays remained primed. The Thanatos warheads remained hidden. The war was over, the shadow was not. In the rift, a scar remained. The singularity scars pulsed faintly, unnatural, and wrong. Scientists of the council studied them from afar, sending probes and drones. Some were destroyed instantly. Others returned garbled signals, whispers of resonance, fragments of shapes in the dark. The multithron chorus warned the council in trembling tones. The swarm is gone, but the void remembers. You cannot collapse so much and expect silence forever. Something stirs in the scars. The council begged humanity to cease experiments in the rift. Humanity did not respond. Years later, children on Earth would ask their parents about the war. Were we heroes? They would ask. And parents would pause, their eyes shadowed. Some said yes, some said no, most said nothing at all. For humanity had won, but victory had left no room for innocence. Ambassador Sira Kalen returned once more to the Hall of Convergence, summoned for an extraordinary session. The delegates had spent months arguing whether to dissolve the council or to reshape it under humanity's shadow. When she arrived, silence fell. The Qatari delegate stood, wings trembling. Ambassador, the war is over, the swarm is ash, but now the galaxy must decide what comes after. Will humanity join the council as one among many, or will you stand apart, lording over us as conquerors? Sira looked across the chamber. Her eyes were tired, older than her years. Neither, she said. Murmurs rippled. We are not your conquerors, she continued. We are not your equals, we are what the war made us. You begged us to fight, we fought. You begged us to save you, we saved you. And in doing so we became something you cannot understand. We will not rule you, we will not submit to you, we will endure beside you. The Qatari hissed. Beside us, you mean above us, your Leviathans patrol. Your weapons remain primed, you wield fire that could burn us all. Sira's gaze was cold. Then do not provoke us, do not repeat your mistakes. You asked us for survival and we gave it. Now learn to live with what you created. The chamber fell silent. No one dared to answer. In time, the council fractured entirely. Some worlds remained loyal to it. Others drifted into new alliances. A few pledged themselves directly to humanity, welcoming the protection of Leviathans. The galaxy did not return to peace. It returned to something new, a fragile, uncertain balance, where humanity's fire cast both light and shadow across every star. And in the silence of the rift, the scars pulsed still. Humanity had saved the galaxy. But in saving it, they had become the fire that would forever define it. The swarm was gone, the council broken, the stars survived. And at the heart of it all, humanity stood alone, saviors and monsters, protectors and executioners, their destiny no longer bound by law or council, but by the fire they carried within. A fire that would never fade.